Previously on Rivera Bonbon, Ricky decided to ask the most important question ever to hit the universe. Does queer shipping make you gay? She wound up going too deep into details that don't really matter. Clark Gable was also purportedly on the list at times, with many rumors of having gay encounters with multiple men, and then had to divide the video into two different parts because it failed in the algorithm. Because it was too long. Because she didn't know how to shut up. And remember, don't just like and subscribe, hit that bell notification so that this doesn't fail in the algorithm and Ricky has to do all of it over again. And now, part 2 of Ricky's annoying yapping.
In the TikTok that got me interested in talking about this subject, the content creator in question commented on how she felt as though the rise in queer shipping contributes to the male loneliness epidemic. Not in the sense that the epidemic is caused by women not wanting to date men, but rather she argued that it contributed to men being incapable of developing male friendships because of the fear of being perceived as gay.
Let me ask you this. Would you rather that lesbo call you catfish mouth or gay?
I don't want to be called either.
Because being gay is as bad as having a catfish mouth.
I cannot emphasize enough how wrong this content creator is about this topic. The idea that showing two dudes kiss on screen will somehow pollute the children into being gay is an argument as old as time. People have been shouting about corrupting the youth since the youth was invented.
Youths.
Socrates was put to death on charges of corrupting the youth. His corruption, of course, was not of being gay, like everyone in Greece was doing gay stuff at the time. His corrupting of the youth was convincing them to go around annoying everyone by consistently asking them questions and learning.
Socrates, the only true wisdom consists in knowing that you know nothing.
That's us, dude.
Oh yeah.
By the way, fun fact, Socrates' trial, they gave him a chance to speak in his own defense, and he basically responded with, "Yup, I did it, and as my punishment, you should all buy me lunch, because I made you smarter." Even Shakespeare was accused of corrupting the youths with the portrayals of unchaste matters and lewd practices. Like, if you didn't know, Shakespeare's work is filled with dick jokes. Dude was never gonna beat the corrupting the youth charges. The argument about gay representation in film and television being harmful goes all the way back to what was discussed earlier with the Hays Code and the National Legion of Decency. According to their declaration, queer representation on screen was the equivalent to pornography. Since their Bible labeled it as a sin, that meant it was inherently bad and everyone had to follow their rules. Sharking hell, I mean, the Talmud explicitly states that mixing meat and dairy is a sin because thou shalt not cook a child in the milk that would nourish it. But you don't see me coming for everyone's Baconator fries. Chicken parm is not a sin, and I will die on that hill because tell me how you get milk from a chicken.
Oh yeah, you can milk anything with nipples.
I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
So because of this organized homophobia, it seeped into public consciousness of what homosexuality and their representation was. It definitely didn't help that being gay was classified as a mental illness at the time, for which the only cure was abusive practices like conversion therapy. And laws or practices like the Hays Code explicitly stated that if they depicted homosexuality in anything other than a negative light, they are damaging society and corrupting the children. Well, you know what I have to say to that?
Kill your shitty child for all I care. That's simply not my problem.
But here's the thing. Let's assume that the people touting the argument today aren't doing it out of bad faith arguments rooted in blatant homophobia. Where are they getting these ideas? This isn't an idea that I've seen in exclusively right-wing or even just exclusively straight spaces. This is something that I've heard from all across the sexuality and political spectrum. So where is it coming from? While yes, it is partially rooted in unchecked homophobia, something that we all have due to years of our society baking in the idea that being gay is wrong, but it also comes from something else. Something just as, if not more, sinister in my opinion. Toxic masculinity. That's a completely normal reaction to your opinion being challenged. Totally not unhinged at all. Toxic masculinity is not the idea that being a man or even being masculine is inherently toxic. Toxic masculinity is strictly the societal phenomenon that pressures boys and young men to conform to a narrow, rigid set of traits that are traditionally associated with men.
No more sipping. Chug it like a man. Come on, chug.
And it goes more in depth than just men like sports, girls like fashion. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Are you the ruler of this earth?
How did you know?
The quality of your top?
Do you love it?
I love it.
I am here if you need to talk. I'm here if
I
you
am
need
here
to
if you
talk.
need
I am
to
here
talk.
if you need to talk.
It also includes ideas like men have to be stoic and not share their feelings because talking about emotions is effeminate.
We can talk about your problems, but I'm not going to have any of that. Or yeasting.
Or ideas that men should just tough out physical illness or injuries because asking for help is weakness, even in the medical context.
Now stand aside, worthy adversary. 'Tis but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm's off. No, it isn't. Well, what's that then? I've heard worse.
Toxic masculinity is also the association of gayness with being effeminate, and because toxic masculinity is gonna toxic, anything associated with women or femininity is bad. When I talk about toxic masculinity, a lot of people just instantly think of figures like Andrew Tate, Fresh and Fit, or Sneeko. But toxic masculinity is more than those blatant examples of men who don't know how to please a woman and therefore need to make it her problem. Toxic masculinity is just as harmful to men as it is to women, and the ways we write male friendships can often contribute very heavily to perpetuating toxic masculinity, along with toxic masculinity contributing heavily to the way we perceive the media we watch.
I don't think about you, Schmidt.
Why would I think about you?
Because we're friends. We're not animals.
We're men, Schmidt. The only time a man is allowed to think about another man is when that man is Jay Cutler.
I don't know who Jay Cutler is.
Why are you saying Cutler like that?
Back in the early 2000s, when Lord of the Rings came out, there was a plethora of jokes about the possibly gay dynamic between Frodo and Sam.
I'm glad you're with me.
These jokes were there, it was super common, and it's still prevalent today to people who watch the trilogy. Like, I'm not gonna lie, even when I watch it now, I sometimes think to myself,
I'm glad to be with you, Samwise Gamgee.
it's just a little bit gay. But what is it about Frodo and Sam that makes it come off as gay? This is actually something that academics who study fantasy literature have discussed heavily with Tolkien's work. Many argue that reading romantic undertones into Frodo and Sam's story is forcing queerness where it wasn't intended by the author, as Tolkien based their dynamic heavily on the bond between soldiers in World War I. Ironically enough, this is also the story of Wings in 1927, the film mentioned earlier as the first to ever include a kiss between two men. As I mentioned in that segment, much of the romance between the two of the film is heavily subtextual, with only the final kiss pushing it over the edge for most audiences to believe it's queer. But look at these two scenes and tell me that they don't look similar.
Don't leave me here alone. Don't go where I come. Follow.
They're almost identical. This aspect is really interesting to me, especially given that time period had very strict gender norms, even more so than we do now. Or did they? While yes, gender roles were certainly far stricter during the 20th century than they are now, with now women having, well, equal-ish rights. Sure, we can have a job and contribute to capitalism, but we have laws that legislate what we're allowed to do with our bodies, and now married women basically have a poll tax with extra barriers put in place in order to maintain the right to vote. But this is fine.
I'm fine! Totally fine! I don't know why it's coming out all loud and squeaky, because really, I'm fine.
Back in the 20th century, despite gender roles being far more restrictive than they are now, The ways men were allowed to display affection with each other was far different culture than we understand it today. In the early 1900s, Western culture was shifting away from homosexuality being an act that people commit, rather to being an integral part of someone's identity. And while this was more accurate about the queer experience as we know it today, this also contributed heavily to the stigmatization of queer people as a whole. Because now being gay is not an act to be vilified, but rather an entire culture of people. With all of that said, however, because homosexuality, while stigmatized, was not an extremely common thought in most everyday men, there wasn't the kind of policing of the ways in which men were allowed to behave with other men. And when it comes to soldiers in particular, as Brett and Kate McKay stated in their 2012 article Bosom Buddies, A Photo History of Male Affection, serving is such an unquestionably manly thing that homophobia dissipates. Soldiers care less about one's sexuality than whether the man can get the job done. When we look at photo documentation of life in the late 19th and 20th century, we can see how socially acceptable it was for men to pose together for pictures, sitting on each other's laps, holding hands, showing genuine affection. And the reason we know that it was socially acceptable, during this time period, before cameras were widely available for public usage, you actually had to go to a professional photographer in order to have these pictures done.
All right, folks, this is for posterity, so don't forget to look far away sad.
This was something that you would have to plan out in advance, go into town, and do in public during a time where homosexuality was so stigmatized and even criminalized in many areas. So with the public displays of this kind of affection, it's really doubtful that it wasn't a common practice at the time. Sure, you could say that some of them were gay. Who are we to tell? Straight is not the default, after all. But showing affection towards other men is not an inherently gay thing and wasn't thought of as such, especially back then. With the advent of portable cameras, we started to see more examples like this of men, soldiers in particular, being photographed in a more natural setting without the professional getup or having to go to a photographer. And guess what? They're still just as affectionate with each other. Again, I'm not saying that all of these men are straight. And there is a high likelihood that many of these men were gay or queer in some sense and may or may not have come out. But what I am saying here is that our viewing of what counts as gay affection between men has shifted since the time of Tolkien writing Lord of the Rings. And part of media literacy is taking into account the context around which a piece is written. So therefore, we can't leave this out of our discussion. So why do people think Frodo and Sam are gay, but not someone like Aragorn? I mean, he kisses more dudes than Frodo or Sam do. But Aragorn has significantly more screen time with women, and also Legolas, who looks and fights like a girl. Come on, I get one toxic masculinity joke, okay? And I'll take it.
That still only counts as one.
Because Aragorn has so much more screen time with women, and even a love triangle subplot, it's almost like a built-in no homo. Sam and Frodo, on the other hand, don't have that luxury and spend like 90% of the film series with just each other. And also Gollum, who is also a dude. Hey look, Frodo gets a love triangle subplot after all.
But he's a liar. He's poisoned you against me. You can't help me anymore.
Aside from just that, Aragorn being king and depicted in a protector role that highlights his fighting capabilities also inherently places him in a more traditionally masculine light. Once again, giving the audience that built-in no homo, unlike Sam and Frodo, who primarily spend their screen time going on a physical and emotional journey together in order to destroy the ring.
Don't you let go!
After cultural events like the Lavender Scare of the 1950s, where being gay officially made you a target for political oppression, homophobia seeped into our public culture. No one wanted to be thought of as gay, so every man had to perform manliness, distance himself from other men.
You're born alone and you die alone, and this world just drops a bunch of rules on top of you to make you forget those facts, but I never forget.
After all, other men were no longer companions in warfare or lifetime blue-collar career compatriots. No, Now every man was competition in the white-collar rat race that started to become the norm of our society. You can't be affectionate with other men because that would show weakness, and they could take advantage of that weakness. So, with the strengthening of toxic masculinity within our society, so strengthened was the growing distance of affection between men and the rising male loneliness epidemic. With all of that said, however, continuing on with Lord of the Rings as our example, it's still perfectly reasonable that people would read queer undertones into the story, even with the cultural context of the time when it was written. Tolkien was actually quoted at one point stating in a letter of his that he was probably most moved by the scene when Frodo goes to sleep on Sam's breast.
Frodo's face was peaceful. The marks of fear and care had left it. But it looked old and beautiful. Not that Sam Gamgee would put it that way himself. He shook his head, as if finding words useless, and mumbled, "I love him. He's like that, and sometimes it shines through, somehow. But I love him whether or not."
And then, even within the further mythology of Middle-earth, something that Tolkien went extensively into detail about, Sam even compares his relationship to the tale of Beren and Luthien, which is an inherently romantic myth that Tolkien based off of him and his own wife. In his comparison to this myth, Sam even says,
"We're the same."
With all of that, and trust me, there is so much more to read within the context of the books, it's no wonder that people are reading romantic, gay undertones to it. Because in our modern understanding, it kind of is. And that's the reason I use Lord of the Rings as an example, because it's kind of the perfect one to deconstruct in this context given the level of detail Tolkien made in the building of the world, the cultural influences of his time that informed the story, and the ways in which our society has evolved with more modern interpretations like the Peter Jackson trilogy or Amazon's Rings of Power series. Tom Bombadil is a sassy bisexual, and that is my headcanon, and I will not hear any questions on this. You can't prove me right, but you can't prove me wrong either. Lord of the Rings is a perfect example in this discussion because it clearly shows us the line between queer coding, with authors purposefully creating a queer character, and the difference between audiences reading queerness into it within the cultural context of our time. And there's a problem with the line between the two. There isn't one. Another show I saw really become a centerpiece for the discussion of queer-coded relationships between men versus platonic male friendships was the TV show Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
We should do something.
Looking strong, John!
This show tells the story of Marvel hero Sam Wilson as he goes on a journey to accept his role of Captain America as was passed on to him by Steve Rogers. Throughout the show, he has a contentious relationship with Steve's childhood best friend Bucky, who is still in recovery from his brainwashing as a soldier for Hydra. A lot of fans wound up interpreting the relationship between Sam and Bucky as queer-coded, and a lot of other fans were upset by that interpretation, mostly because it was a fun play on the buddy cop-style movies, which are really popular, especially amongst men and masculine culture. See Lethal Weapon.
I'm too old for this stuff. He said I'm too old for this stuff.
But when you really give a gracious look into people who are reading queer undertones of the relationship dynamic, doesn't it also sort of meet the criteria for the enemies to lovers trope? Even down to the comedy surrounding them being put into physically compromising positions with each other?
All right, get close. Come on, get closer.
Well, which way
Why do you have to have your
right or
legs
left?
open? You know what? Fine, here. You happy
Whoa.
now?
All right.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
We're locked
That's
in
fine.
now.
It's a little close.
It's very close. That's what you wanted, right?
Guys,
We see that same thing in the romantic comedies using that enemies to lovers trope.
Oh my God!
Naked!
Why are you
Oh
wet?
In those stories, it's supposed to enhance the sexual tension between the leads. But in stories like Falcon and Winter Soldier, it's supposed to enhance the comedic tension between the two because they look gay. But what really is the difference here? There isn't one. It's entirely subjective to the viewer. And personally, in my opinion, what largely enhances the amount of people reading queer undertones into work without the authorial intent is the fact that queerness is still stigmatized. Even though it's technically seen as more societally acceptable in today's day and age, we are still starved for stories centering queer people. In an analysis on film and television projects in 2021, statistics found that out of 350 major films, only 28% featured an LGBTQ character. And only a third of those characters had significant screen time of 10 minutes or more. And when queer characters are included in significant roles, just like we see when women are the main characters in any sort of franchise, people go absolutely nuts. Because how dare they ask for 29% when straight cis men only get 31%?
36! But last year I had 37!
I mean, when Disney made LeFou gay in Beauty and the Beast movie, people called for literal boycotts of the movie. All because he had one scene where he danced with another man. This is also why we in the LGBTQ community get so upset with practices like queerbaiting. Studios give us the hope that we might get that extra 1% of representation only for them to pull the rug out from under us. And then when they do pull the trigger and make a queer-coded relationship canon, they often wind up killing them off immediately. This is a trope known as barrier gaze. Supernatural is famous for the romantic and sexual tension between the characters of Dean and Castiel, spanning 9 of the 15 seasons of the show. And when fans finally got that canon confirmation of the relationship, with Castiel finally telling Dean he loves him,
Because the one thing I want, it's something I know I can't have.
Castiel is immediately whisked off to super hell. Tara and Willow in Buffy the Vampire Slayer finally reached a solidified comfort and happiness in their queer relationship, only for Tara to die literally minutes later. And even if the gays get to survive, they're often written out. In Grey's Anatomy, just as Callie Torres discovers her bisexuality alongside her partner Erica Hahn discovering she's a lesbian,
I am so gay. I am so gay. I am extremely gay.
Erica is written out of the show just as they name their feelings for what they are.
I can't believe I didn't know this.
Erica, Chief is right.
No, you. I don't know you at all.
And sure, Callie gets other relationships with other women throughout the rest of the show, but again, they wind up getting written out every time.
If you get on that plane, if you go without me, we are done. Do you hear me? We are over.
We are standing in the middle of an airport screaming at each other. We're already over.
Catherine Mayfair in Desperate Housewives developed feelings for a woman, and then in that very same episode, they leave the show to travel to Europe together, only for Catherine to come back later to no homo the entire thing.
Robin and I broke up. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, a long distance move can be tough on a relationship. That, and I decided I just wasn't into women anymore. Although in Paris, it's hard to tell the difference. The women don't shave and the men carry purses.
It's no wonder that queer viewers want to imagine some world in which we get to have happy relationships, since we rarely get to see it ourselves. And my question to the people who get annoyed by this, by queer coding, by queer shipping, why does it bother you? What irritates you so much about suspected queerness? Is it that you heavily identify with those characters and it makes you feel like they're calling you queer as a result? Or does it just bother you to see something changed from what you see in a show? If it's the latter, let me tell you now, other people having different interpretations does not invalidate yours. Your opinion and your interpretation is not taken away by other people viewing things differently. No one is going to take the exact same interpretation as you, since everyone has different life experiences that inform the ways they see media. But if it's the former and you think that them implying your favorite characters might be gay, that makes you question your own sexuality, maybe your sexuality wasn't so secure to begin with. Queer fanfiction and queer characters and queer shipping, no, they don't convince men that they can't have close platonic relationships. Men are allowed to have strong emotional bonds regardless of their sexuality.
I love you, bro. I love you, bro. Psych, I got you, bro. I got you, bro. Jack, worse rule.
Beliefs like these are some of many reasons why I hate discussions around the male loneliness epidemic. There is a male loneliness epidemic happening for men with increased levels of anxiety and depression to back it up. However, despite what they say, men aren't lonely because women don't want to date them. I mean, if it were solely due to the lack of romantic partnership with the opposite sex, we would see a subsequent rise in female loneliness. But we don't, because women aren't afraid to bond with each other.
February 14th, Valentine's Day, is about romance. But February 13th, Galentine's Day, is about celebrating lady friends. It's wonderful, and it should be a national holiday.
I don't know if you're a woman who has experienced dating other women, but let me just say, women are the hardest to flirt with, because with women, there is no such thing as no homo. Women are all the homo. In fact, recent studies suggest that a large percentage of women are on some level attracted to women. In one such study, psychologists analyzed the sexual responses in 555 women, only a small percentage of whom identified as non-heterosexual. In the study, psychologists found that 68% of participants were shown to have some sort of gynophilic reaction, indicating unconscious attraction to women. But even without that unconscious attraction, even straight women have many healthy platonic relationships with other women. This is because women tend to have multiple people in our lives whom we rely on to receive emotional support. Men, on the other hand, statistically only rely on female partners in order to achieve said emotional support rather than other men in their lives. And this phenomenon is only exacerbated by our society's obsession with finding romantic partnership in order to feel fulfilled in our lives. That one is a problem for both men and women alike. I mean, people still to this day act like a single woman in her 30s is a weird phenomenon. There are some amazing examples of non-queer platonic relationships between men in film and television. Characters like Sean and Gus in Psych.
Didn't you see the trespassers will be shot sign?
Oh yeah, they totally said that. My bad.
Or JD and Turk in Scrubs being amongst my favorites.
One of the best things about my friendship with Turk is that we're always challenging each other to try new things.
I can't believe we're going to a strip club for lunch. I don't even think about it that way.
And these should be seen as the blueprint for how to show healthy and platonic male friendships in media. These characters are open about their struggles, they talk to each other about their lives, and when one needs something, the other is always there. And while representation does matter in normalizing marginalized people, you as a viewer also have the ability to recognize that most of these stories are made up. They're pretend people, pretend kissing. They are not real. They cannot hurt you. I really struggle to validate the ideas that people present in thinking that reimagining people in marginalized roles somehow damages the integrity of both the work and society. Having a black mermaid or a black elf does not affect you because mermaids and elves aren't fucking real. And also, why is it that when a white person is cast as a different race or ethnicity, people shout that it shouldn't matter because it's just about the most talented performer getting the role? But then when a black or brown actor is picked to play a traditionally white role, suddenly they can't believe that a black person was the right one. Even though both the creators of The Little Mermaid remake and Rings of Power acknowledge that they were solely looking for the best actor for the roles, regardless of race. And also, Tolkien never stated that all elves were supposed to be fair-skinned. Even if you go with the idea that Middle-earth is supposed to be based on Europe, there are black and brown people in Europe. And Tolkien knew that, describing the people south of Gondor as having darker hair and skin. But of course, most of the people of color in Lord of the Rings are from countries that align with Sauron, but that's another problematic aspect of Tolkien being a man of his time. But you know what? I'm just gonna say it. I don't even think Tolkien would care with changes that represent marginalized people, considering he intentionally based the race of dwarves off of Jewish people in a time where we were being heavily persecuted, just because he wanted to give us positive representation. He knew positive representation mattered. So I don't believe you if you say that it's a betrayal of his text and intent. The man outright accepted his books being banned in Germany during World War II because he didn't subscribe to the idea or belief in an Aryan race. And my feelings ring the same about queer representation in fanfiction and mainstream media. I struggle so heavily with the morality and purity tests in the shipping wars, and those who state that certain ships make you an inherently harmful and problematic person. You can pry my Raylo and Zutara ships from my cold, dead fingers, okay? Film and television is for everyone, and everyone has the right to reimagine and remix art to create something beautiful. Shipping doesn't harm anyone, but saying that queer shipping is harmful to male relationships is like saying water is a gateway drug because 100% of addicts drink water in their lifetimes. Toxic masculinity, on the other hand, harms everyone, every time. So what is the lesson here? Don't drink water. Water leads to drugs. Choose Diet Coke. Hi there! If you have any pieces of media that you would like me to talk about and analyze, be sure to give this video a like and put your suggestion in the comments down below. And Shell, if you even made it this far, maybe comment a rainbow emoji for pride and to confuse everyone else for the fun of it. Today's shout out goes to Tim Baisley. Tim, welcome to the community. It really warms my heart to see how our Patreon community is growing. It's been so validating for me as a content creator to know that people like you care so much to help me create the things that I do. Film and television really is my passion, and I've wanted to do this for so many years. It's amazing that thanks to you all, I have the opportunity to do it. If you would like to be our next Patreon shout out, please be sure to check out our Patreon or YouTube memberships down below, where you can access exclusive content, chat with me, and learn more about the things that I'm studying in my MFA screenwriting program because, hey, everyone deserves to learn more about the things they want to do. And you shouldn't have to spend as much money as I am to do it, because I make my bad life choices work for other people. We also have some Autistic Bimbo merch down below, and if you send me a picture in the Patreon chat, I'll be sure to show you off in the shout out. Or just send me a picture of your pet, because I can never see enough pets. Thank you so much for watching, liking, and sharing. I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Bye!